Hi there, Mr. Mayo here. Today we're going to talk about using a practice journal. A practice journal is a set of papers where you keep track of your everyday practice. It can be as simple as a sheet of paper or spiral-bound notebook. It can be as complex as a weekly planner or even a published practice journal. There's a lot of those actually out there available. Some people even use digital means as a way of keeping up with a practice journal. It's a documentation of your progress. Many of the best musicians out there use a practice journal in some way, shape, or form. Now, the big picture. If you create a practice journal, you should keep in mind that it is your journal. Make it your own and use the ideas you want to use. Some of the things I'm going to talk about in this video may seem like I'm telling you you have to do it, but ultimately it's your decision. This is just some of the things I've personally done or seen others do. Ultimately, remember that practice is about quality and not quantity. It's not necessarily about the amount of time that you practice, but the progress that you made during it. A practice journal helps you get organized through the variety of things that you can write down. You can create a section to write out your goals. Remember that in order to learn, a goal must be clear, achievable, and measurable. That means you have to be able to receive constructive feedback. Write down your long-term and your short-term goals. It may be best to write down your daily and weekly goals on the pages you're going to use each day and each week. At the beginning of the week, plan out what you want to accomplish. Be reasonable though. I wouldn't quite plan out each day yet, as each day of life has its own challenges. If you plan out each day at the beginning of the week, it's likely you're going to be adjusting it a little bit each day. When you practice something, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to reach one goal and a little bit less time to reach another. Don't be discouraged though. As long as you're working, you're making progress. Let's look at what you can write down each day. As you go through your daily practice, I would make sure you put the date and time that you practiced. The time is so that way you know what was covered during your particular practice session, just in case you actually practice more than once a day. I wouldn't be as concerned with writing the actual amount of time that you practice, let's say like 30 minutes, an hour, 45 minutes, whatever it may be. I wouldn't be quite as concerned with that. Remember that practice is about quality and not quantity. However, if it makes you warm and fuzzy inside, go for it. What did you work on? Write down the fundamentals, exercises, techniques, etudes, and pieces that you worked on. Get specific. What measures did you work on specifically? How was the accuracy level? The accuracy level means if you played a passage of music so many times, how many times was it accurate? So for instance, if I played a passage 10 times and it was accurate 8 of those 10 times, then my accuracy level would be 80%. This matters when you're trying to get better at something. The higher the accuracy level, the more likely that particular concept or section is ingrained in your memory. It can also help tell you that if your accuracy level is not as high, you're probably rushing the process. What was the tempo? Write down the beats per minute you're performing at so that way you can reference it in future sessions. If you're developing the tempo over time, you can even write down the tempos that you worked on. This can help you see if the work you're doing each day, day-to-day tempo-wise, is maintaining a steady growth. It can also show you if you have to go back and rework up some things to tempo that you might be rushing the process. It shows you what you might have to work more on and invest more time in. I recommend leaving some room in your practice journal each day for positivity. We tend to get so negative when we practice because we focus on what's wrong instead of our individual gains. Remember that each day we have small little growths that over time build up to something much larger. Take a moment at the end of your session to write down a few things that showed improvement and a few things that went really well. Over time, you'll notice that throughout your session, you don't just focus on the negativity, but you'll also focus on what really did happen very well within your session. At the end of your practice session, plan out what you're going to do next session. Reference your weekly goals and what you accomplished this week in comparison to the last week. What realistic progress can you make in this session? Reference your weekly goals and what you accomplished in this practice session compared to the previous session. What realistic progress can you make in the next session? What did you accomplish this session? What are your priorities? These are all progress-based goals that will help you out the next time that you practice. I recommend using shorthand within your journal. It just makes things seem less cluttered and takes up less time. I would abbreviate names of pieces. I would write out the full name of the piece the first time and then put in parentheses whatever abbreviation you're going to use for that piece. There's other ways of abbreviating things, such as M could stand for metronome, AR could stand for audio recording, VR could stand for video recording, BPM is beats per minute. The possibilities are limitless. It's just what you want to abbreviate, and as long as you understand it, that's the important part. Have a section in your journal where you log good ideas that you've either discovered or heard or advice that you've gotten from a teacher. Maybe this will be some performance ideas that you'd like to try or even do on a regular basis. Some of these things can actually be ideas from other types of performers. You don't have to look just at your instrument. Some of the best inspiration comes from people who play other instruments because they sometimes approach things a little bit differently. And practicing's not just done by instruments. You can look to sports for inspiration. The psychology of practice in both sports and music has developed over time to improve one another. There are instances where athletes and musicians have hired people from one another's fields actually to help them learn how to practice more efficiently. When it comes to advice from your peers or your teachers, I would just log it down regardless of whether or not you choose to use it, because it may be valuable information for you later on when you encounter a challenging spot. Also, if you ever end up teaching, going back and referencing these can give a lot of ideas that might help you improve as a teacher and your students improve. When a journal's full, keep up with it. That way you can reference it if you ever play one of those particular pieces again, or in the future for other ideas. You may want to keep your log of good ideas and advice in a digital format on your phone, computer, or in the cloud, so that way it can be easily referenced. All this will help you in your future endeavors of practicing and teaching. There's another way to do all of this. It's a lot of work and is very organized, but it can be very beneficial, especially if you plan on having music as a career or already have music as a career. Instead of organizing your journal by day, organize it by category. A fundamentals category, a technique and exercises category, a scales and arpeggios category, an etudes category, and a pieces category. This usually works best in a binder rather than a notebook because you can add pages easily and remove the pages when you're done. What this technique allows you to do is to see everything about a particular exercise or piece all on one page. This can create an easy reference for how to work on a piece, fix it, and develop certain parts of the music. After you're completely done with a piece or an exercise, you can remove it from the binder and place it somewhere else, such as another binder or a series of binders, so that it's highly organized. The point in all of this is all the information is there to where you can reference it all in one sitting. And if you ever come back to a piece when it's in another binder, you can just open that binder up, find that information, and you know everything you've got to do to work it back up. Some individuals even keep a digital record so that way they can easily reference things or know exactly where those sheets are. Even if you don't use this method, I would recommend at least writing on the outside of your practice journal when you're done with it what you worked on inside the journal. That way when you go back trying to reference something, you'd be like, okay, this journal's for this piece. A practice journal can be as simple or complicated as you want it. I would start simple on my own and build up from there. I hope this practice tip was helpful. Please subscribe for future videos. Be safe, do work, and go practice.